Welcome in everyone to a Thursday night edition of the Philly Guys Speech. Joe Quill's here with you. Hope everybody's had a great night out there wherever you are here. Going to be a fun night here. We're not going to have a short night like we did Tuesday night. I can actually stay up till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning tonight. Don't have a doctor's appointment to worry about. I do have to call in a referral tomorrow, but that's something different. But anyways, hope everybody's having a great night here. And we'll have our typical show tonight here, and the regular crowd shuffling in right now. Billy Joel would be proud of that right now. Uh, anyways, got a fun show here tonight here. Got some interesting topics tonight, and I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of a rant with one of them, even though my rant will be a little bit different from what some people are acting like in Philly right now. So, anyways, on the show tonight, Caitlin Clark, she announces she's going pro after her run in the NCAA tournament. Got the Philly story about the Dollar Dog Night. That's what I'll probably rant about. Embiid, Joel Embiid plans to return this year. I'll give thoughts on that. Saw an interesting article here. Joe Lunardi, who works for ESPN, he's also a St. Joe's guy. He suggested expanding the NCAA tourney. Now, this was behind the ESPN Plus paywall, and I know it's ESPN. Come on, Joe, we don't like ESPN. Well, it's a necessary thing, and yeah, I get articles from all over the place. I have an article here from SI.com. I have one from Yahoo. If I get to those stories, we'll get to them. If not, it's not that big of a deal. But I want to hit the main stories here tonight, and he has an idea for expanding the NCAA tournament. It's not as good as mine, but it is what it is. And I'm also keeping an eye on the Hawaii-Cal Davis game. And I know what you're saying. I think Mel Gibson says it best when it comes to me giving a pick of Cal Davis in Hawaii. Oh, gotta turn the volume up, dummy. There we go. This is what this is what Mel Gibson would be saying right now. But that's because I've been trying to hijack the beginning of the show of the Bleacher Brothers when Play Action Real gives his hockey picks. AJ Johnson gives his picks from the NBA. I give a random game, and it's just at this time of the year, it's been college basketball. And to let you behind the curtain, I haven't been making any picks. I haven't been playing anything because, I'm just trying to get my money back. And I have been getting my money back, those that work at my company that I work for that will not be mentioned. It is bonus month starting tomorrow. And also with tax refunds coming in soon and stuff like that, it's all about the Benjamins. So haven't been playing. My horse picks have been crap, but, with every ebb, there's a flow. And, I'm in that crevasse right now, but, might get to that mountaintop here before you know it, but it is what it is. So, but I'm going to keep an eye on that, even though it's not that big of a deal. So, some little things here along the way. So, now usually you do have the odds and ends near the end of the show. I want to mention this at the beginning only because I'll forget. And my ADD will take over and I'll be like, what the heck am I talking about? As you know, at least some of you know that watch this show live, I talk about the podcast. And basically, it's just the audio from this. I strip it from the video and I post it through Spreaker and goes wherever you get podcasts. Now, I tell you from the beginning, I'm not about the numbers. I'm not about, oh, well, I had 1800 I had 1800 downloads in 24 hours. I don't care about that because you know what happens when I start worrying about 1800 downloads. I'll start thinking, well, how come this one only had 500? Do I suck? Something like that where I start questioning what am I doing wrong? Because I'm the type of person where if I see those numbers and I see that they're going down, it's, you know, what am I doing wrong? Because it's just the way that I am. What is wrong with me? So I don't worry about numbers. And, if they're big numbers, if they're small numbers, whatever. But what I look at is where my downloads are coming from. Now, mind you, if you have a small podcast like I do, you do have um, you if you have your iPhone or you're listening on your Android or whatever you do have you do geolocate to a certain area, and even geolocation sometimes isn't great because I can tell you for one thing when my aunt first moved up into the far northeast. And this was back when landlines were still a thing, even though the cell phones are starting to take over. They said, oh, well, if we have an emergency, we have to call on the landline phone because if we call on the cell phone tower is actually across the line in another county, and that county will be getting our request, and they were like, we got to redirect you, and whatever else they do. But that was 15, 20 years ago. But so I am aware that this could be, some people do have, some people are traveling around. We do have a transient lifestyle. I know if I'm downloading podcasts, I'm sure some of those smaller podcasts that I subscribe to, they'll see, like for example, when I was in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago, they'll say, oh, I had 3 hits from Las Vegas, Nevada. Well, that was probably me 3 times. But I always try to give a shout out to those that are listening that don't come up regularly. Now, regularly, I have hits from New Jersey. That's from the Atlantic City area. And, since I'm fairly familiar with the Atlantic City area, like you'll see a couple of different towns that are in that area. So like Ventnor City or Margate, or I'm making towns up, but you get the idea. But my good friend GWK, he's from the Atlantic City area. He listens to my podcast all the time. I have a hit that comes up regularly out of Conshohocken, Pennsylvania, which is in Montgomery County. I just don't know who that person is. Thoughts and prayers if you actually follow my bets. I do have hits from Havertown, Yeadon, Delaware County areas. I know that Delaware County is so small that I could see that my buddy Mike hits at a couple different spots. So, I know that he hits it. But like I had a couple of hits this past week or two from the Turks and Caicos, and today I saw when I finally uploaded the podcast from the Tuesday show, I saw that today I had a download from Wilbraham, Massachusetts. Now, there's always a possibility that it was the person in Boston who hit a couple of weeks ago that ended up downloading when they're traveling west to Western Massachusetts, or they're going back home to Boston. Who knows? And it may be a totally different person, but whoever you are in that hit from Wilbraham, Massachusetts, thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed that podcast. It was a quickie, and hopefully, if you're listening to this one as well, tell everybody about the show, the podcast, the stream, because also with the stream, I'm 7 followers away from getting to that magic 50. And that 50 means I get to become affiliate. We can do some fun things, and we can even though I don't want to do it, you could always put in a cheer, like cheer 69 and 69 bits comes my way, and I get a percentage of that, and Amazon gets a cut of that as well. But that's for another day. And I'm never going to be the type of person that's going to have his hand out saying, give me your cheers, give me your donations, give me this, give me that. And if I do give you if I say, hey, donate, the donation will probably be for a charity. It's not going to be for me. So, but anyways, I thought I'd do some odds and ends there. And I do want to thank those that take the time to listen to this podcast, whether you're a new person, that new person in Wilbraham, Massachusetts, if you were that person in Turks and Caicos, and also you have VPNs as well, and that could set you off that in another area too. So, but either way, whoever is new to the show, even tonight, if you're watching even after the fact on YouTube or here on twitch.tv/Joe Quills, thank you, welcome aboard, spread the word. We're slowly gaining power, and I don't, I want to grow organically, and I'm at 43 followers, and you know what? I'm okay with that. But if I can get to 50, that's even better for me. So, just a little bit of a organic growth to my followers here, and I do see that, for example, over the last day, and this could have been two people that were watching after the fact. Don4112 on Twitch followed me, and then we had 1996 Brendan. Thank you for following me, and even if you watch after the fact, I hope you enjoy the show, because I am planning on doing more things as we go on here, and we'll see what happens. So let's get to the main portion of the show here. We began with the odds and ends here. So now let's get to the biggest story of the day. At least I consider it's the biggest part of the day, and unfortunately, SJ is not here at the moment, but I will tell you one thing. I'm not surprised by this move, even though it's like, well, NIL versus an NBA salary, stuff like that, but Caitlin Clark did announce today that she is going pro after this upcoming basketball season, which has a few weeks left. And she announced on social media today that she will be finishing her college career this year and won't be coming back for a fifth season because of the COVID-19 waiver. And I think we're getting to the point here where everybody who had that opportunity to use that COVID-19 waiver will be exhausting it in some way, shape, or form, either using it or passing it, or passing the opportunity to go pro, get into real life, get into the real world. So that was the big news this afternoon, to me at least. Now she's projected to be the #1 overall pick by the Indiana Fever. Now some people will I mean, I could start a conspiracy if you'd really want and say, she plays at Iowa. Indiana's the next state over, or 2 states over. Nah, but seriously, you could have been, well, is she staying, is she not, something like that. So, but she's projected to be the #1 overall pick by the Indiana Fever when the draft takes place, which is after the NCAA basketball season, because they pretty much do it days to weeks after, because the WNBA season runs in the summertime, and that's how they get a lot of the American players to come back to the United States and play in the WNBA, because a lot of these women do play abroad. Like, for example, I think the one way that we found out about how that is, even though I kind of knew about it, was the whole Brittany Griner thing. And this is not a forum to debate, Brittany Griner and the drugs that she had. And, well, quote unquote drugs. Um, we're not. This isn't about what she did, what happened, the exchange, all that stuff. This is about what female basketball players do. They go play internationally in an international league, whether it's the Russian league, Germany, Spain, England, wherever they go. They do have, they do play over there, and then they end up going back, um, and they go, and then they come back here for the summer. Now, I'm wondering if the, and this is just me speculating, and this I have no idea about. I guarantee you that SJ was here, be like, Joe, shut up. But then again, she tells me to shut up all the time. I wonder if the WNBA could survive running the same time of the year as the rest of those international leagues or not. But then again, you do have, and especially this year for the WNBA, it's going to be a weird year because you have the Olympics thrown in there as well. So, but, you know, I mean, it's probably better that they are a summer league just because the American consumption of sports, whether it's in person, on TV, over the computer, streaming, whatever. Um, but she had a 33-point performance at Minnesota last night. She broke the women's major college scoring record with a 33-point performance. She has 3,650 points. She's 17 points away from passing Pete Maravich, who holds the Division I overall record between men's and women's basketball with 3,667 points. Now, you're saying, wait a second, I thought she passed Kelsey Plum a couple of months ago. Well, she did pass Kelsey Plum, but before the NCAA took over the governance of women's basketball in the early 80s, the college basketball was governed by the AIAW. And that was the forerunner to women's college basketball under the NCAA umbrella. And it was on here, and I don't know who it was. Here it is. She broke Lynette Woodard's major college women's mark of 3,649 when she was at Kansas from 1977 to 1981. And that was during the AIAW era before NCAA took over governance of women's sports. I'm sorry. Clark passed Kelsey Plum on February 15th. She hit that crazy three from the logo, if you remember, or just about the logo. But she said on social media, while the season is far from over, we have a lot more goals to achieve. It'll be my last one at Iowa. I'm excited to be entering the 2024 WNBA draft, and good for her. You know, and the thing is, I will say this. You know, I mean, everything is based upon eligibility with, you know, what each pro team does. Like, for example, in the NFL, you got to be out of high school 3 years. NBA, it's to get into the NBA, it's 1 year out of high school, but there's additional options now because you can play abroad, you can play for the G League Ignite, you know, or you can play 1 year of college. But you do have these different options. Whereas in the WNBA, I believe you got to turn 22 years old, or you got to graduate college. So, Maddie, welcome in. Maddie's in the chat room tonight. He says, I can see Caitlin going pro where I don't know, but I can't wait. Maddie, she is projected to be the #1 draft pick. I mean, that's as Captain Obvious as Victor Wembanyama. for the NBA draft this past June. She'll be going to the Indiana Fever. It's only a matter of, you know, is somebody going to trade for her? And, you know, and that it's going to work great for Indiana because of the fact that she played at a Big Ten school. That area of the country knows her more than any other part of the country, even though she is well known. She has her NIL deals with Gatorade and with State Farm and any others that did not pop up on this. But and also the fact that she herself is driving up the costs on the secondary market for tickets to her final home game on Sunday. And I kind of teased this on Tuesday night when I did my quickie show. On the secondary market, it's the most expensive women's game to be sold on the secondary market. And the prices range from $408, which is probably the cheap seats way up top, depending on however Carver Hawkeye Arena is set up. And you know, you don't have to show me the you don't have to show me that, but well, this is according to Vivid Seat. I think they're partnered with ESPN. $408 for the cheapest seats. The most expensive seats are $5,200. And also I also saw this, but I don't know who quoted this, or who shared this, so I can't give the proper credit where it's deserved. But I'm still going to mention it. The Big Ten tournament, the women's tournament, is completely sold out. So that's the power that Caitlin Clark has, especially being that it's her senior year. Bank Boy, welcome in. Hope you're doing well out there as well. But yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's crazy, and you know, and when you have that star power and you reach that star level, you know, you're going to draw fans and what we call asses in seats. And she's definitely doing that. And she's probably going to do that with Indiana, because also Indiana's probably the best spot for her to play. Not only the geographics of it all, but also when the summertime comes around, there isn't that much competition for the sports dollar. There's the AAA team, the Indianapolis Indians, which I think is Pittsburgh's team. Pittsburgh's AAA team. And if not, it's not that big of a deal. If I'm wrong, so be it. So I guarantee you, especially the first couple of home games, they're going to sell out that stadium. They're going to sell out the field house there, the Gainsbridge Field House, I think it's called. I'm still used to it being Conseco. But yeah, Indiana picked a good year to win the draft lottery, and they're going to have the Indiana Fever is going to be printing money the next couple of years, because they were lucky enough to win the draft lottery and get her to be their number one pick, unless they pull one of the dumbest moves ever, like the Chicago GM a couple years ago trading up for Mitch Trubisky, when the San Francisco 49ers were definitely not drafting a quarterback at number 2. You remember that trade. John Lynch showed that he was a genius even as a novice GM back then. I mean, unless Caitlin Clark says, do not draft me, which I doubt she will. I think that she has a good head on her shoulders where she can play anywhere and make it. You know, and you don't hear that in the women's game of people saying trade me. But I'll tell you what, this is a superstar who's going to make the WNBA even bigger. and she's just 22 years old. She turned 22 in January. If you remember, they had that COVID waiver for those that were in the 2020-2021 season, that academic year. But she will move on to the pro game. Now, Indiana has not made the WNBA playoffs until since 2016. Ironically, a leap year, and today is Besiktas Day. At least I think I'm pronouncing that right, which is the one day out of every 4 years that's added to the calendar, February 29th. And, you know, just showing my nerddom here because I think I got that from a guy here in Philadelphia. I think it was Mike Jarek back in 2016 that mentioned it. And the way Mike Jarek is, he's a goofball, and, you know, he probably says something goofy, and then his co-anchor is trying to be a straight-faced person. He's telling jokes and stuff like that, but I mean, even I'm excited for Caitlin Clark going pro, and you know, this isn't a type of move where you just look at it 3-5 years down the road and you say, what the heck were we thinking? This is a star. This is somebody who maybe if you get a second person to play to go in this contest, if they replicate this year's Caitlin Sabrina Ionescu versus Steph Curry, maybe you bring in a second male in there and you have a 4-person contest. Who knows? But just little thoughts that I have here as we start off the night here on this Thursday night. Tuesday. All right, let me give myself one of those because since I never know what day or night of the week it is anymore. There it is. So now let's go to the other big news here. And this is local big news here in Philadelphia, but it's gone national. I saw it on the ESPN site this afternoon, and it was in the top 4 stories early this afternoon. But Phillies fans are saying this to the Phillies. As Dollar Dog Day is no more with the Phillies. And I will show you this story here, and I gotta bring up the site, and it's gonna go black for a minute, so don't worry about that. Okay, so I'm going to share this video, and this gives you a background of everything, of the reason why this turned into a story, and why some Phillies fans are upset. This is actually from last April, but it's worth giving you the background on this. So here we go. And this is from 6 ABC in Philadelphia.
Took a viral turn last night in Section 112.
Oh, hold on a second.
Started in our section.
All right, I gotta hold on. Let's try this. All right. And that gives you a background. I do apologize for the video there because I think it was something with my Streamlabs, and I am going to be going into a different program in the next couple of weeks here. But, anyways, so basically, it turned into one big food fight. And if those hot dogs are packed tightly, and usually they're not when you get them from the stands, um, you do have they do turn into projectiles. And even if you get them from the fanatic when he shoots them into the crowd, so yeah, you do have that. Um, so Dollar Dog Night is no more. Phillies fans are not happy about it, and some people joked around. I know I quote Tony Bruno a lot on here, and he was joking around saying it was Bidenomics or whatever. But you gotta understand. Some people you just gotta understand that they'll joke around. So, but I can tell you for one thing: one rotten apple spoils the bunch. Well, this was a bunch of them, but one thing I did see today, and I don't know if it was a file video that was shown on the local news here in Philadelphia from 6ABC, because I think I had 6ABC on while I was working this afternoon. And I noticed that the $1 dog night was a college night. So that tells me that even though it is 112, and also with April, the Phillies also had over the past couple of years these special deals where you can get tickets for X amount of home games for $50, so that they can get asses in seats. Kind of like how I was talking about Caitlin Clark, how you don't have to worry about selling tickets to that game. But in April, because it's so cold here in the Northeast, and especially like for example, April this year, you got the Reds coming to town, you got the Rockies coming to town. Not necessarily the big draws, but you do have teams coming in, and fans, and also you got kids in school still, so you can't really bring the kids to the games, even though the games do start earlier and they end quicker for the most part, because they did end 20 minutes quicker than last year in general. But Dollar Dog Day is gone. Phillies officially ended this popular promotion after 27 years and replaced Dollar Dog Nights with a 2-for-1 deal for 2 April games at Citizens Bank Park. And you can't do Dollar Dog Night in the middle of summer, because not only are you drawing fans, not only are you already drawing a crap ton of fans, you got a near full house, especially with this Phillies team that has been to the NLCS the last 2 years. They were in the World Series in 2022. They gave Houston a huge scare in 2022, if you remember correctly. And the reason why you do promotions is because you try to get people into the stands that you wouldn't normally get, because you're always going to have your season ticket holders, whether they're a full season plan or a partial season ticket plan, and you're going to have the walk-ups every night. You're going to have the people that are in town says, "Oh, bleep it, let's go to a game," something like that. But April is the hardest to get fans to go to the game because of many different reasons. And also, in the city of Philadelphia, if you ever pull up Citizens Bank Park on Google Maps, you will see that you have Lincoln Financial Field across the way, but that's not used that much, if at all, in the spring. You may see a concert there over the summer, but when they have a concert, the Phillies will be on the road because of the parking there. And then you have the Wells Fargo Center, where the Flyers and the Sixers share their arena. So you do have competition for the dollar with the major sports, and especially in April. April's a crapshoot. And I'm on record here, and I know I'll be wrong because, I'm always wrong. I admit it. I don't need a woman to tell me that. Uh, but I am still on record saying that one of the nights of WrestleMania is going to get snowed out. Although I'm probably going to be wrong. As I kick the cord out here, 1 second. So what they're doing at Citizens Bank Park now is they're going to have they're going to have the buy one get one free deal. Now, as I showed on the video, which wasn't always showing there, and I do apologize for that. It's just the whole program, however. Armed with projectile frankfurters, some unruly Philly fans began chucking their favorite Hatfield meats during a game last season. Hatfield is the brand that supplies Phillies Franks. It's a local provider of food. But the dogs soared like cans of corn throughout the stands and onto the field. The demand for the discount dogs also led to clogged lines on the concourse, leading to security and safety concerns. And here's the thing. Like, for example, Indiana on Tuesday night, they did have a fire alarm go out, and they had to leave the stadium or leave the arena. So, and the thing is, the concourses are fairly wide, but the thing is, you get a hot dog that's $1. It's like, man, we can't even get it for $1 at Wawa or 7-Eleven. I want a couple of hot dogs. I mean, at least they'll have hot dogs, unlike the Vegas Golden Knights when I was out there a couple of weeks ago. I went to one stand before the game. Oh, they'll be about 10 minutes. I'm like, screw that. I'll just take a pretzel. And then second intermission, I was like, you have any hot dogs? No. But, because all I was craving was a hot dog when I was at the game Monday night, the Monday after the Super Bowl. But I can understand also the with that because like, for example, when I was watching the news today, I saw that it was college night or college series night, I think they called it. The thing is, the college kids will go to that game because guess what? You get a cheap ticket. Maybe you sneak down in the middle innings, late innings, and you get $1 hot dogs. Now, granted, some people were saying, well, if we do that, but the only problem with that is you have cashless stuff. That doesn't matter to kids, because they could have their mommy's credit card or, they get the reverse ATM where you put $50 in and you get a card as a result, that sort of thing. But this all started for the Phillies 27 years ago when they were still a Veterans Stadium, and they would only draw about 15,000 for a stadium that sat over 60, and it was all empty seats, and it was also a time after 1993 where the team was horrible. They proved that 1993 was a fluke year, and who would want to go to the vet where it's all falling apart, and then on top of that, you got bad baseball in front of you? Who would want to go that? But now they usually did it when the crowds are not expected to be as well, and you can kind of guess early on because with the way that things are now, with everything being electronic and buying everything over the internet, you can see how many tickets are sold if you're in the Phillies front office. So, I mean, I'm sure they were in some way, shape, or form, but not the way I'm describing it. But now, the idea originally, according to John Weber, who's the Senior Vice President of Ticket Operations and Projects, said the idea originally was much more family-oriented. 4, 5, 6 people and having a discounted concession item. It morphed over time. It's gone more to a younger demographic, as I was describing before, which is great and all, especially in the April-May timeframe. But the BOGO nights are going to be April 2nd against the Reds and April 16th against the Rockies. A lot of people are not liking it, and I just say, you know what? I'm just surprised that they held $3 dog nights after the one game where they were throwing them all over the place. But you know, it's a one rotten apple that spoils the bunch. That's basically what it is. And you just look at that, and you're talking about the crowds in the concourses, and they didn't sell them at every concourse either. At every stand that they would sell hot dogs in, it was, well, you go behind 140 in the lower level down the third baseline, and you can go to 112 on the first base side, and then for those in the upper deck, go behind 335 and 316. I'm making numbers up, but you get the idea. You know, when you only have it at certain spots, that's why the traffic is what it is. And then on top of that, because I was at $1 dog night, it was just coincidence. It wasn't dollar hot dogs, whatever. You know, the hot dogs that they gave you for dollar dog night were not your regular hot dogs. They were smaller. So people are going crazy about these hot dogs, but you're getting like 70% of the regular hot dog. So I don't think that you can actually argue, you know, unless something changed where they actually sold regular hot dogs. And the thing is, they were not always cooked, not completely cooked, you know. But one thing I said in chat with Tony Bruno this afternoon while I was working, and yeah, and I don't know if he said it or not. He was saying, well, what they should have did is limited to 4 hot dogs per person. Yeah, but he goes, well, you can only buy 2 beers at a time. Why can't you limit hot dogs to 4? And you probably could, but my point is this. You have too many beers, you could be caught drunk driving, then the Phillies are liable, and you know, and God forbid somebody gets hurt or killed. Whereas if you have 18 hot dogs, the only trouble you're probably going to get into when you announce into the bathroom that you're going to let something loose in this stall, everybody vacate the premises because I'm going to let out a dookie bomb like you wouldn't believe. You know, that's you know, you're probably getting in trouble for saying the word bomb, even though you're describing it as a dookie bomb, which is the Brown, you know, the Browns going to the Super Bowl and then some. But you don't, you know, but the one thing, even though I understand Tony's point of view from this afternoon, you do have to understand that alcohol is something different because it has more of an effect on you. It impairs your driving. It impairs basically everything. Whereas, you know, eating too many hot dogs will have you destroying a bathroom. Whereas, you know, crashing your car on the way home from the game because you're too drunk, you know, you're ruining potentially your life and an innocent bystander's life or whatever. But you know, and Weber also said here, our goal is always to have a great fan experience. If you were there at the game, that game, it was not a great experience. And, you know, you shouldn't have to be dodging projectile hot dogs, whether they're cooked or not. But, you know, and some of the crazy things that they had here, and they said, Aramark, who provides all the concessions to the Phillies, they said ahead of the 2022 World Series when the Phillies played the Houston Astros that 1 in every 3 fans eats a hot dog at Citizens Bank Park, and an average of 6,951 hot dogs are sold per game, enough to line Ashburn Alley 5 times. And Ashburn Alley is that walkway behind center field. But, and it's not the first time the Phillies got blowback because of the dollar dog nights. They tried to cut back from 3 to 2 2 years ago, and they were forced to add a third one. But I think this time, I think when you have a couple of rotten apples in a bunch, you have to take a stand here. And even if the I can probably say without going to a dollar dog night the last couple of years, I can see the long lines, because I know what it's like with a long line for the bathroom. And that's moving along no matter what. But this is like people with hot dogs, and getting your card out and seeing your card gets denied and stuff like that. But and it may just also be the way that they distributed the dollar dogs, because of the fact that they weren't at every gate. Because you could go to a different concession stand. You go from that left field concession to the one behind home plate. They don't have the dollar dogs. They had the regular dogs, which are like $5-6, and maybe even more than that this year. But now, they did say some different things here about dollar dog night. The Pirates hold at least $6 dog nights, at least 6 this year. Now, if you wanted to go to a minor league game, the Wilmington Blue Rocks have $2 dog nights on Wednesdays. That's in the area, even though Pittsburgh's 350 miles away from here. Texas sells dollar dogs every Wednesday at home. Minnesota Twins have a dollar dog deal each Tuesday home game. Kansas City Royals are among the teams that still offer low-cost hot dogs, but in the case of the Philadelphia Phillies, they are going to change it to buy one get one free. And also, when you also bring the cost of something down as severe as it is, you're not making money out of it unless you get them to buy a soda. You're buying a pretzel. You're getting a beer. It's just like going to the supermarket. There's a reason why when you see an end cap, like let's say you have, and most supermarkets are set up this way. If you're in the bread aisle, you're going to have the jelly there, and you're going to have the peanut butter there. You're going to have the breadcrumbs. There's a reason why that supermarkets are set up the same a certain way, because they know that if one thing's on sale, you're going to get the other items that you need to make this dish or sandwich or whatever. And if we put the one on sale, they'll have to get the second one, which isn't on sale, and maybe be jacked up another 50 cents or so. That's how you do business. And you gotta, and you can't always plan on that, because there are the younger generation, the Gen Z or whatever they are now, whatever the youngest generation that's just becoming adults, they will, if they even want to eat hot dogs, because Gen Z doesn't want to drink even, but you could actually have a bunch of people who that may even say, ew, hot dogs, and they'll tell you that they're vegetarian or some crap like that. But yeah, it's but even though a lot of people in Philly were upset about it today, I'm like, so what? Truthfully, it's probably better in the long run, because you won't be ducking flying hot dogs all over the place, no matter how tightly wrapped they are or not. I'd rather have my own hot dog in my hand and eat it in peace without something whizzing by my ears or head because you want to be an idiot. But like they say, a rotten apple spoils the bunch. And for those that are complaining, you know, complaining about shrunken down hot dogs, sorry, I don't have much. I do not support you. And, even though the Phillies will be making money off of this, but, you got to think about the safety of everyone involved, whether it's, getting hit with a tightly packed hot dog wrapper or even the large crowds that end at certain stands. But you get the idea here. Um, so let's stay with the local news here. And, even though this is the Philly Guy Speaks podcast, um, I do talk about things other than Philadelphia, like I did in the beginning with Caitlin Clark. But this was another big story that came up here. And actually, the fourth story I have is actually kind of Philadelphia related because it's a guy who has worked at St. Joe's University. But um, the Sixers are plummeting, and I've joked around and said, "Oh, it's the process 2.0." And I say, for example, on Tony Bruno's show, and I've been quoting Tony Bruno's show a lot tonight. But and if SJ was here, she would be telling you in chat that the Sixers are hurting because they don't have that third star player. You got Embiid, you got Maxey, and that's it. And that's because you have Tobias Harris, which is one of the worst contracts that the Sixers have given out in a long time. But Joel Embiid met the media today. He came out of his cocoon, his apartment, his house, whatever it is, with his toddler son and his wife. And a cute thing that was mentioned here was that his son gets upset anytime he leaves to go to practice, to go to the store, whatever. But he did speak to the media for the first time since he suffered that knee injury a month ago. And he also took that nut shot as well. But nobody talks about that. But you could tell something was wrong even before when I rewatched that video for the millionth time today. It wasn't necessarily because I wanted to watch it. It was on the local news. But he hopes he'll be able to return sometime before the regular season is over. Now, the way that they describe this meniscus tear, and maybe it's just because the Sixers told exactly what it is to a T, at least me not being a doctor or ever having a knee surgery, maybe it just isn't what it is. But it looks like my UC Davis pick on the Bleacher Brothers is going to be another win. I need to start playing these wagers because I'll be 6-1 the last 2 weeks when I hijacked the Bleacher Brothers show with my picks. But anyways, Embiid wants to return sometime this year. He said that's the plan. Obviously, everything has to go right as far as getting healthy and being as close as I'm supposed to be. But yeah, that's the plan. Now, I said this a couple of times. If he comes back, Embiid, and the Sixers get into the playoffs somehow, even if they got to play in the play-in game, which is no guarantee because, like, for example, if you're playing that 9-10 game, that's a one-and-done game. Whereas if you're in the 7-8 game, you got a game cushion. But if you can get Joel Embiid back with a couple of weeks and you're still in playoff contention, you can very well do what the Miami Heat did last year. Now, granted, the Miami Heat's a different thing. Eric Spoelstra is one of the top coaches, if not the top coach in the NBA right now. And that's the reason why he's been there for as long as he has. But even though I wouldn't be surprised that the Sixers may not even make the playoffs, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up playing a 9-10 game even, but I would not be surprised if they're this year's Miami Heat only because of the injuries that Joel Embiid sustained. But it wouldn't surprise me as well that my initial thoughts, which were more guided towards James Harden being a little crybaby, almost like he couldn't go to the strip club for whatever reason. Um, I wouldn't be surprised if um, the Sixers don't make the playoffs, but I wouldn't be surprised as well if they make a run if Joel Embiid comes back with a couple of weeks. But especially if they're still in contention for a playoff spot. But um, Embiid was in the midst of an historic season when he uh, got injured. Well, exacerbated the injury, as you'll hear in a couple of seconds. Jonathan Kuminga inadvertently fell on his left leg during a scramble for a loose ball, and he also did a leg drop on his testicles, but nobody talks about that. Um, when the Sixers lost 119-107 to the Warriors in January 30th, at that time, Joel Embiid averaged 35.3 points a game, 11.3 rebounds, and 5.7 assists. Now, the team announced February 6th that Embiid did undergo a procedure to address an injury to the lateral meniscus in his left knee, and that he would be reevaluated in 4 weeks, which will be this upcoming Tuesday. There's no timetable for his return, but he continues to feel good about his rehab. So I think that what the Sixers will do and what Joel Embiid will do, because Joel Embiid also wants to play in the Olympics this year, especially being he did say this year that he was going to play for Team USA, and he is a U.S. citizen now. So, I mean, that's not the reason why he chose Team USA, because he did have a choice between his home country and also France. He chose the United States, but he did ultimately choose to have the procedure done after meeting with 5 specialists, and that he still plans to play for Team USA in the Paris Olympics this summer, health permitting. Um, Embiid said there was only one path to take, and it was the path that they took to have the surgery. Now, the reigning MVP, who will be dethroned because he didn't play the 65 games, he was on a pace to average more points than minutes played when he got hurt, something only Wilt Chamberlain did during the 1962-63 season. And Wilt Chamberlain was a freak at that time because, most of the basketball players back then, when the season was over, they went to their real jobs. It isn't like it is now where you play basketball 8 months out of the year and then you off-season train for the next 4 to get ready for the next season, because you're making millions upon millions of dollars, whereas back then you were making pretty much a living wage as opposed to making the top 5% in the country. But I mean, some of the crazy numbers that he had this year, and also the fact that he was playing for 2 months with a sore knee. He had a streak of 16 consecutive games of 30 points and 10 rebounds, matching Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the second longest ever streak behind Chamberlain. He also scored 30 points in 22 straight games, including a 70-point performance against the Spurs, and was on pace to lead the league in scoring for a 3rd consecutive year. Embiid said, "That's why it's extremely disappointing. I was on a roll and felt like I wasn't even close to where I wanted to be, body-wise and basketball-wise, because I wasn't at my best. So I feel like there's still another level that I could go to." And that's scary to think. It was very disappointing, but I was having fun playing, getting a lot of wins, dominating, and he was dominating even with the bad knee. He's also become the face of the new 65 game rule for eligibility for the sport's top individual honors, including MVP and all NBA selections, as part of the league's player participation policy, particularly after he missed Philadelphia's game in Denver against Nikola Jokic after a late scratch after that game, after that same left knee was bothering him during warmups. Well, you criticize him, but I think you know he wasn't bullshitting. And 11:06 p.m. is the time of the first curse. So if you had 11:06 on your bingo card tonight, congratulations, you're tonight's lucky winner. Asked whether he had anything to do with the decision of playing the Warriors game when Embiid was visibly bothered by his knee. He said that it did not, that he had simply been trying to help the Sixers team that had been scuffling even before he got hurt, and that he wouldn't have done anything differently. And I can tell you, even from when the first year or two, when the beginnings of the process were, when the process was really starting to take shape, you really had him bitching and moaning on the sidelines because he was only allowed to play 25 minutes a night. He was only allowed to play 20 minutes a night. He was only allowed to play 30 minutes a night. It was like you're taking him out because he hit his 30-minute max with 4 minutes to go in the game. He knew he could do it. It was just that, even back then when he was 22 or whatever it was, he wanted to play, but the team, whether it was the head coach, the general manager, upper management, they were like, we got to make sure we have our future set up here. But he complained about that when he was younger, and he wanted the, for lack of a better term, the training wheels taken off because he was that type of player that wanted to play, but the Sixers were afraid that he would get hurt. Embiid said, my mindset is playing basketball as much as I can. For 2 months when I was not 100%, I wasn't even close to it. I just feel the need of giving my all to the team and just wanting to win because I know I can, I can add that to my basketball team. And even him at 50% is scary because, that 70-point game was when he was bothered by his knee injury, but it's crazy what he could have did, what he did. I mean, what could he have done being totally 100% if he scored 70 against San Antonio? What would have scored if he was 100%? 120? And I'm hyperbolic on that, but you get the idea. Philadelphia hopes to get Embiid back to form soon. Now, Embiid has lifted the franchise that endured yet another offseason of tumult because of the ongoing drama surrounding drama queen James Harden and his trade request. And had Philadelphia sitting in essentially a four-way, and Embiid also had the Sixers in a four-way tie for second, or an essential four-way tie when he went down. Right now, going into today, the Sixers were in a three-way tie with the Miami Heat and Indiana Pacers for fifth place in the East, and just a half game ahead of the Orlando Magic in eighth. Considering that the Sixers are 26-8 when Embiid plays, and just 7-17 when he sits, falling into the play-in tournament is a serious possibility. But no matter where the Sixers are in the standings, Embiid's still going to come back. He said the same reason why I'm pushing to play the last couple of games before I got hurt. When asked why he considered coming back to play, I just love playing basketball. I want to be on the floor as much as possible. I only have about 20 years to do this. Pork Chop, welcome in. Hope you're doing well out there on the West Coast there. Just talking about the Joel Embiid situation here. he met the media today, and it looks like Embiid may be back here. Sixers were aggressive in trading. They got Buddy Hield from the Pacers. Um, he has a similar fit to J.J. Redick and Seth Curry. Um, Sixers then got Kyle Lowry in the buyout market. Another guard who could space the floor around Embiid. He has extensive playoff experience as well. And Kyle Lowry is also a local kid. Um, but Embiid did meet the media today. He's probably, you hope he, for the sake of Philadelphia, that he comes back soon. But it is something that I'll have to keep an eye on, because we may end up in the lottery. But like I said at the beginning of the year, my reasoning was not what happened so far this year, but I did say at the start of the year, I said I have a strange feeling the Sixers will not be in the playoffs. And I thought it was more because of James Harden being a little bitch. And, having gone through the Terrell Owens situation in 2005 after the Eagles went to the Super Bowl. If you remember, he was doing his sit-ups in his park, in his driveway in Morristown, New Jersey, not far from me. I just got the feeling that I could see that happening, but Sixers got rid of James Harden. It's just, you don't play him for anything else here. So, now one thing I did see here, and we are getting into March Madness. March is about 48 minutes away here on the East Coast, as the Bissextus Day is almost over. And, basically all that means is one day out every 4 years you have that extra day. Leap day. But I saw this article by Joe Lunardi, and he suggests that the NCAA expand to 80 teams. Now, back before, I would say, the late 60s, early 70s, and it says exactly 50 seasons ago, which will put it in 1974, when I was only a few months old. Lefty Drizel's Maryland Terrapins were one of the best teams in the country. They were number two in the rankings at one point. And they played NC State for that year's ACC, Atlantic Coast Conference Championship. They dropped that game in an epic overtime struggle, 103-100, to the eventual national champions. Now, back then, the conference tournaments, if your conference had one, meant even more, because back then, only the conference champions got in. And it was because of Lefty Drizel, as well as Al McGuire, who one year told the NCAA where to stick their bid when he didn't get the region he wanted to be in. Al McGuire told the NCAA to take a hike back in 1970, when the Warriors were slotted in the Midwest region, which meant that he would have to go to Fort Worth, Texas, when he felt they should have been placed in Dayton, Ohio. So back at that time, the NIT tourney was just as prestigious. He opted for that tourney instead, and they won that championship over St. John's at Madison Square Garden. Now, some of this fills my argument that I have about expanding the NCAA tournament. In 1975, the tournament went from 25 to 32. You had 25 conferences at the time. At least I think there were 25. Because there were independent schools, but I think they put probably the best independent probably in there. Now, they allowed a second bid for up to 7 conferences. So that's how they did it back then. The tourney field reached 40 in 1980, 52 in 1983, then the bracket that we know the most, the 64-team bracket, was came into being in 1985. And at least with 1985, and it probably is the case early on, but I didn't do any research on this because I'm part of the Bleacher Brothers. We don't do research. We do shitty podcasts and shows. I'm kidding, but the one thing I will say, with that 64-team tourney, there was no limit on the number of at-large selections from a single conference becoming a fixture in 1985. Now, there were minor changes that came along. They've gone as high as 68 teams. And you got the play-in round. And also with the brackets, if you fill out a bracket, and I'm probably going to have to post something in SJ's admin channel. Some of you won't be able to see it. Maddie will. Pork Chop won't, because I don't even think he's even in that Discord. Bank Boy probably will not. At least he won't see the beginning parts of it. He'll see what we present to the rest of the group. But, when you fill out those brackets, you're filling out brackets for 64 teams. The 4 playing games you don't have to pick. It's just, okay, well, Fairleigh Dickinson beat Texas Southern, so, now it's Purdue and Fairleigh Dickinson, and then, but there is a different crisis now. With all the realignment and everything that's going on in college sports, it's threatening one of the most universally loved events on earth, according to Joe Lunardi. As major college football schools continue to chase every dollar, break off from the masses, including a separate basketball championship possible, what would be more capitalistic than a tournament featuring every power conference member? Or worse, a tournament featuring only the power conference. And I said this a couple of times before, and I'll say it again. Chip Kelly, as criticized as he is in the city of Philadelphia for being a dunce in Philadelphia, and failing as a head coach here in Philadelphia, and then failing in San Francisco when he probably should have taken a year break if he wanted to stay as an NFL head coach. He said, in terms of football, you should have 4 groups, one in the West, one in the North, one in the South, and one in the East. You play all the teams in your region, and then you play another region in quote-unquote non-conference games. And it made a lot of sense. And, I will never criticize Chip Kelly for his intelligence, because I think he has a ton of intelligence. I just think that he gets criticized because of the way he handled things in the pros, especially cutting Deshaun Jackson and LaShawn McCoy because he just didn't like him. Well, he learned that this was not college football. I don't think he ever learned that. But there's a possibility that we could just have the Power 5 conferences, and in the case of college basketball, if you want to add the Big East to that, the Power 6, you're going to have to do something like this, but nobody wants to mess with a great thing. And Joe Lunardi tells this story where he was offset with Bobby Knight, and Bobby Knight asked him a question. He said, would I be a bleep? Because he said, Lunardi says, insert derogatory noun of your choice. I think it's the D word. maybe an A-hole. Let me ask you a question. Would I be a blank if we could stop all this bickering by going to 96 or 128 teams? Joe Lunardi said, Coach, between us, we've won 902 games, and you have all of them. So please, take this with all humility on my part. That many teams, at least right now, which was about a decade ago, that many teams, at least right now, is a colossally bad idea. Lunardi showed Coach Knight the teams that were 96 or even 128 on the board that year. No way those teams should play for a national championship. And in a way, yeah, I could see that. And Pork Chop agrees with me. He never had the same success in the NFL that he had in Oregon because he actually got caught on a show cause charge with the NFL. When he was with Oregon. So even though he was with the NFL with the Eagles and then he went to San Francisco, and eventually he did end up back at UCLA, and now he's took in a way, a demotion to be an offensive coordinator at Ohio State now. He really did not, he just didn't get the pro way of managing, and I think that's why, like for example, if you even go to Doug Peterson, he wanted a little bit more control of the team, and I think that Doug Peterson, in a way, got punished because of Chip Kelly. But I also think that you don't ask for more control of the team after a 4-11-1 season. Maybe if you went 8-7-1 that year, maybe if you made another deep run into the playoffs where you're this close to another Super Bowl berth. But Chip Kelly never had that same success, and I agree. And I think he definitely he was one of the last coaches in the 2018 class, and I had this article printed up, and in that class there were 20-some coaches that were hired that year, if that number's correct. Chip Kelly was in there, Josh Heupel, there were a couple other major coaches here, but the coach that's still around in college football from that 2018 class is a coach at Rice University. He's 20 games under 500 for his career, but the reason why he still has a job is because Rice has higher academic standards than other teams in their conference and in general in college sports. So, you kind of get a hall pass because of that, but other coaches like Chip Kelly, and he was rumored to be fired at the end of last year, and he survived. I reported, he may be fired, but you look, and 2 weeks later when he's on TV with the final game of the season, he's still there. But but he had to leave Oregon because if not, he probably would have been treated worse than Jim Harbaugh. But with what they were doing in Oregon was probably a justifiable punishment that he had to show cause for the issues because he did bolt to the NFL. But Joe Lunardi suggests an 80-team tournament. He says you gotta do that because you gotta, let me get the right wording here, the right verbiage here. Now some of the things that, some of the numbers, and I look at the numbers here because, like my argument for expanding was that when the NCAA went to 64 teams in 1985, there were about 280 colleges that were D1, 282 to be exact. So 22.7% of the schools got into the NCAA tournament in 1985. Well, the the Division One men's basketball has 362 teams this year. Now, granted, there are a couple of teams that are transitioning from Division Two to Division One, so they're not really eligible. Um, but the original, the 68 team field right now represents 18.8% of all Division One schools this year. Now, the original 64 team field, which was 282 schools that made the 64 team field, that represented 22.7%. Now, it's easier to make the NFL playoffs at 43.8%, or the MLB playoffs, which is at 40%, than the NCAA tournament. Now, the men's basketball championship must expand to save itself, according to Joe Lunardi. The purists may say no, never, but to hold firm is to further endanger the long-term future to which firmly hope to preserve. Carefully crafted expansion conducted over an examinable period of time is even more critical in today's climate, is when Al McGuire and Lee Drizel other battle with the suits of the NCAA. We also have NIL that's going to increase, so you're going to have more money that's going to be available as well. And I imagine over time that NIL is going to be redefined because it is the Wild West when it comes to NIL right now. But what you have to do, according to Joe Lunardi, you got to make the tournament profitable for both the haves and the have-nots, the big schools, the small schools, to play in the same sandbox. And it goes into the Coach Knight situation. It seems like the tournament is going to be an acute issue of the Big Ten and the ACC each having 18 schools now, and the Big East, the Big 12 and the SEC having 16 apiece. Lunardi's recommended compromises when the next round of major media negotiations occur around 2032 is to expand to 80 teams. And you're even going to have schools that have no shot. Like, he gives some examples here. Indiana State, who's made the top 25 for the first time since the Larry Bird era, and Drake, not Drake the rapper, Drake University in Iowa, I believe they're in. They would both get into the field, not one or the other, because they play in a smaller conference, Missouri Valley, or a mid-major. Grand Canyon, which is the class of the WAC, they could lose a late night selection Saturday game and still get in. You could even have an at-large bid for the Ivy League. Princeton's been kicking ass this year. Now, personally, I think 96 works best to me. And my suggestion is this. If you're going to expand like that to 96 teams, you got to have qualifiers. You got to you got to earn that spot. And if you saw my blogs from years ago, and if you found them, congratulations. I think 96 teams works best because, now granted, you're going to have the arena set up you're going to have the arena available to the NCAA for 5, 6, 7 days. I just think that you can fit it in the 3-week window for 96 teams if you have the first weekend of games being 3 games and have them Wednesday, Friday, Sunday sites, and have Thursday, Saturday, Monday sites instead of Thursday, Saturday, Friday, Sunday. Now, what I say what you do is because if you just expand to 96 without any qualifiers, you're going to have teams that are going to have under 500 records. And just to show pork chop my age, And, I'm not afraid to say it. I am 50 years old. When I was in college the first time around, which was about 30 years ago, we had a game in, I think the school's in Aston, Pennsylvania, Newman College. They're now Newman University. And Holy Family was in the NAIA, which is a small college governing body, which is separate from the NCAA. Like every once in a while, you'll see schools from the NAIA moving into NCAA Division III or Division II. Holy Family, where I went to school originally, they went from NAIA to Division II this year, right around 2000, right after I quit. So one thing that the NAIA had, they had a qualifier to either get into either a conference tournament to get yourself an automatic bid into the national tourney, or if you were an independent like Holy Family was back when I was there in the early 90s, you had to have, you had to play these schools from D2 and D3 that sometimes you beat, sometimes you didn't, but they were fairly good matchups. But you weren't playing Division One schools like Drexel or Penn, the lower tier schools. But the one thing that the NAIA had is you had to qualify for a conference tournament or a regional tournament or a district tournament, I should say, because I remember Holy Family used to be NAIA District 19. And you had schools from all over Pennsylvania, New Jersey, upstate New York, and it turned into a region. And the one year we had Lynn University from South Florida had to come up for the tourney that we hosted. And it was all weird because, you're not used to your home school playing in their road uniforms on their home court because they're the 3 seed, and this school is not only the number 1 team, they're like the number 8 team in the country. But the one thing is you had to either get a 20 rating, and how they did the ratings, I don't know, I don't care. But it just showed that you were playing tough teams or winning quality wins and stuff like that. Kind of like you had the net rankings in the NCAA Division One, which is what used to be the RPI. Now, you either had to have a rating of 20 or better, I think 20 was the number, or you had to have a 500 record overall. My suggestion, as I put my glasses back on, my suggestion is if you're going to expand to 96 teams, I want to weed out those teams that were dogging it all year. What I would recommend, and once again, feel free to comment if you're watching this on YouTube after the fact. Hit me up on Twitter at Joe Quills, Threads Joe Quills. Feel free to hit me up because as long as it's something that we can continue this conversation without turning into, oh, you're an effing idiot. I'm okay with having a fun conversation because that's what this is. This is a fun but thoughtful suggestion because one thing I do want to do is I want to have a thoughtful conversation here. And the one thing I would say is, if you're going to expand to 96 teams, what you do is, if you cannot get a 500 record in your conference or a 500 record in Division One games, because a lot of the schools, especially in the Midwest and the mountain regions, they play a lot of Division Two, Division Three schools and NAIA schools because the Division One schools are more spaced out, so it's harder to get those matchups. get them to come in on a Tuesday night and then go back on the campus the next morning. So, um, and then what I suggested as well is if you beat a non-Division One school, it doesn't go onto your win. It doesn't go into your win-loss record in terms of playing in the tournament. But if you lose, and I saw a couple of years ago, my alma mater Drexel lost to a Division two or three school. Actually, I think it was University of the Sciences, which no longer exists because they got bought out by St. Joe's University. But University of the Sciences was a Division two school, and this was your typical matchup. Even though Philadelphia and the whole Eastern Seaboard, you can go by van from Drexel to Binghamton, New York, let's say, to play Binghamton University or State University, New York, Binghamton, or whatever. You could just go up there, drive up there, play your game, come back, and be back around 2 o'clock in the morning. But what I suggested is, even though with that, because University of the Sciences was in Southwest Philadelphia, not far from the Drexel and Penn campus, and a little fun fact, and we discussed this. I think it was on somebody's show. I think it was Tony Bruno's show this afternoon or yesterday. If you walk the wrong way down 33rd Street, you go from Drexel campus to the Penn campus and not even know it, because they are literally next door neighbors, even though their campuses are blocks wide. And I've done it a couple of times, just wandering around campus and going to the train station, stuff like that. But if you lose to one of those non-Division One schools, those losses should count against you, because you're not playing within your division. So imagine, instead of that final game of the season before the conference tournament, you got to play a bottom feeder. The way the schedules are now, for the most part, the games just, a lot of the games this weekend are probably going to be, for lack of a better term, a walkthrough. So, but imagine with my theory and my suggestions, okay, you want to get into your conference tournament to see if you can make it to the national tournament, the championship tournament. Imagine your whole season rides on this one game. And I've done this bracket, I've done the eligibility, and for the 360 schools, I think it runs between 205 and 220 schools that would be eligible, either by having a 500 record overall or a 500 record in conference, one or the other. If you do that, you're going to have a ton of matchups where you have an added element where we don't win, our season is over, even before they get to that conference tournament. I think that brings even more into it, because guess what? Now you got to show your worth, even whether it's overall or within your group of 10, 12, 14, 18 schools that are in your conference. And if you're not good enough to get a 500 record in your conference, and you don't have that record overall, in my opinion, you do not deserve to play postseason basketball. But that's me. I would love to see that happen, where all of a sudden you're sitting there and you kind of like you saw the Phillies fans near the end of Game 7 of the NLCS last year, and you could just see the Phillies fans just staring off into space like, what the hell happened to us? This was a team we should have blown out. We blew them out 2 straight games at home, and we lose 4 or 5 to them afterwards. But I'll tell you what. And if you're listening after the fact, if you're watching on YouTube after the fact, if you're watching on Twitch, you may have to just tweet me or go to my email, which is right there, joe@bleacherbrothers.com. And I admit I haven't looked at that email the last couple of days, but I will start looking at it more because I'm throwing more ideas there. Hit me up. I'm willing to discuss this in an intelligent manner. If you just come to me and say, this is a dumb effing idea, it's one of the dumbest effing ideas I ever heard, and you have nothing to back up your statement, okay. You just won't get a reply. Or I just may block your ass. But if we can have a fun conversation, and trust me, if you saw me interacting on the Tony Bruno show on YouTube, and by the way, download the Tony Bruno show app, Tony Bruno Sports Network, I should say. And also if you saw me interacting on Bleacher Brothers, I'm always joking around. I'm always, occasionally I have something that is informative, but I like joking around because I like making people laugh or groan. I mean, I don't know how many people are like this, but my personal mantra is a groan is as good as a laugh, because you know what a groan is? It shows that you understood the joke. But, as long as we don't have to agree on the number of teams. You may even be in that mindset that Joe Lunardi mentioned where we can't mess with it. We got to keep it at 68. Or you could be Bobby Knight about a decade or so ago, who said, will I be a blank if I suggest a 96 or 128 team tourney? And Joe Lunardi, who's Mr. Bracketology at ESPN, he showed why it isn't a good idea. But you know what? With the way that college basketball has become, with the one and done schools, even before NIL, I always wonder, like some teams that get snubbed and they're the top seeds in the NIT, I always wonder how they would have done in the tourney. Because it's also the fact that you have these certain schools that get in just on name alone, even though they barely were over 500 in their season. But feel free to hit me up, because that's the great thing about making this audio available to you in podcast form, making this video available to you on YouTube, and also being able to watch this after the fact. Because guess what? We can have a nice debate about this. And you know what? Maybe I am wrong. I'll admit it. I've been ice cold on my horses. And, even though I did pick another winner on Bleacher Brothers in the chat room, I believe it's 6-1 in my last 2 weeks. I can't pick anything else properly, but I can't pick my horses properly when I do my articles. And by the way, tomorrow's article will be a race at Oakland Park. But it's just I'm on a roll right now with that. It's just that I haven't been playing them. I haven't been building up my banking, my account, whether it's DraftKings or FanDuel or whatever. But feel free to hit me up, and we can continue the debate. And as long as it's a civil conversation, I'm more than happy to go back and forth with you guys. As long as you understand that I do have a regular job and I may not get back to you right away. I know that's an issue that I've had on Facebook lately with a couple of people where they just have the need to DM me all the damn time when you know I'm working. So what if I share stuff once in a while? It doesn't mean that I gotta go into a conversation, but that's a topic for another day. So we're getting close to an hour and 45 minutes here, and um, unfortunately, I do not have any Philly fades here tonight because I did not look at it. So, so just to let you guys know, um, since I am the horse racing degenerate for Bleacher Brothers, we have a huge weekend coming up on the Kentucky Derby Trail. We have the Gotham at Aqueduct. We have the Fountain of Youth at Gulfstream Park. We have the and I wrote this damn article, damn it. Hold on, let me pull it up because I wrote it all out and I sent it in already. You have the Fountain Youth at Gulfstream, the Gotham at Aqueduct, and the John Battaglia Memorial at Turfway Park. So you have those three races on Saturday. Now, there is a fourth race this weekend. That is the San Felipe Stakes at Santa Anita. They moved their card from Saturday to Sunday because of a rainstorm that's coming. Now, if you remember a couple years ago, they had a lot of breakdowns on the track. Some contributed to the racetrack, some contributed to different things. You can contribute to a million different things with it, but the San Felipe was moved to Sunday, and they have a big card. They got the Santa Anita Handicap, which isn't in stature as it used to be, but it is a big race there for the older horses. They got a Kentucky Oaks race that day as well. So a lot to look forward to this weekend for me writing articles. So I have to, I got a lot of writing tomorrow night when I get done work at 7:30. So, but I do appreciate everybody who takes the time to come in here and watch. Maddie was here, Bank Boy was here, Pork Chop Express was here, and anybody else who snuck in and out without me noticing them. Because I do this for fun. This is a hobby that I have, but it is a fun little thing I do, and eventually I'm going to get to gaming as well. I am 7 followers away from 50, where I can become affiliate if I'm using the correct term, because titles mean nothing to me. Just the fact I could make a couple of bucks on the side if I really wanted to. But like I said at the beginning of the show, it's not about me wanting your money. If I got to that point, I'm not going to be overly saying don't spend money, and I'd probably be like, I would probably be saying if it's certain people that cheer money to me, cheer their bits to me, I'd be like, why are you doing that? But it's just the way I am, because I'm not the type of person that has their hand down, like, unless somebody else in my family, which will probably get me into trouble. But I don't have anybody. I don't have my dad telling me, don't tell anybody about this or that. And if I was mentioning anything about my dad, it was to people I know would not pass shit out to everybody. If they knew that if it was related to my dad, it stayed between me and that other person. So, and it wasn't blasted on Facebook or anything like that. And anytime I blast something on Facebook, I blast a certain person on Facebook or even on Twitter, there's a reason behind it. And like my dad said the one time, oh yeah, so and so called your sister because you said certain things and blah blah blah. I'm like, oh, why are you telling me this now, months and years after the fact? I mean, it's kind of like when I skipped school one day because I overslept. when I was working overnights and then having a morning class on campus. My mom goes, "Oh, you cut class?" I'm like, "Well, technically I didn't cut class. I overslept, but yeah, it was about a month ago." But, you know, if something is important enough that I talk about it, I do. But for the most part, my Facebook has become sharing fun stuff, sharing jokes, posting different things, And also, I warn people from time to time, hey, if I'm sharing something that's sports related, it's probably because I may be using it on my show on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10 o'clock right here at twitch.tv/Joe Quill. So I'm going to call it a night. And I do appreciate everybody taking the time to watch and listen, even after the fact. Because I appreciate everyone that takes the time, because I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie. There's so much competition out there between podcasts and streams and everything like that. And the fact that Pork Chop took time out of prime time because it's only 8:52 out there on the West Coast, I appreciate everybody taking the time, even if you haven't spoken in the lobby tonight, because this is all about having fun, and have a little fun conversation if somebody wants to step up and talk. And, I'm not going to say, hey, you must talk. But I do appreciate Pork Chop, Bank Boy, Maddie, and anybody else who is watching that is just watching. But I do appreciate everybody, and I'll be back on Tuesday. It's actually an off day for me. I might even go to the racetrack since I have some money, but weather permitting. But maybe do some Bleacher Brothers work as well. So, as I say, since I'm talking about Bleacher Brothers, I'm wearing some Bleacher Brothers swag. BleacherBrothers.com for all your sports needs. And this podcast is part of Bleacher Brother Network. And do appreciate everybody, and hope you have a great night, great weekend. And I'll catch you again on Tuesday here on Twitch. Good night, everybody.